The Reformation affected religion in the way that Christian unity wasn't restored even after the Counter-Reformation. The Reformation allowed the freedom to worship and pursue God in the way each individual saw fit for him or herself, without the interference of a huge bureaucratic church capable of controlling and influencing every area of life. For example, Protestantism was created through an effort to reform Catholicism. Thus, many things differ between these two religions. Religion overall was transformed as a result of the Reformation. The Baltic provinces became Lutheran, while the Grand Duchy of Lithuania remained Roman Catholic. In the years following the Reformation, other religions were also formed. For example, Pietism formed.
What is Pietism?
Pietism is a general term used to describe the trends in the church stressing an individual relationship with God. As I was saying, the Moravian Brethren was created in the 1700s, Calvinism began in the 1500s, and grew as a religion in the later centuries.
What are some ways that Protestantism is different from Catholicism?
For example, Protestantism believes that all believers have equal access to God, where in Catholicism, priesthood is necessary because only priests can perform the sacraments. Furthermore, Protestantism believes in predestination, the fact that everyone is predestined to their fate and human action avails to nothing. However, in Catholicism, God's omnipotence does not restrict human will, and each individual is still responsible for earning their own salvation.
In most cases, the Reformation is seen as a good thing, but did it cause anything bad to happen?
The Reformation also caused religious wars, such as the 30 Years' War in Germany and the English Civil War in England. The major impact of the 30 Years' War was the extensive destruction of entire regions, especially in Germany. The population of the German states was reduced by about 30%. In some areas, about 2/3 of the population died. The Swedish armies alone destroyed 2,000 castles, 18,000 villages, and 1,500 towns in Germany. Furthermore, episodes of famine and diseases significantly decreased the German population. The English Civil War took place in the 1640s. It was caused by the fact that James recalled Parliament in 1621 to discuss the future marriage of his son Charles to a Spanish princess. Parliament was outraged, because if such a marriage occurred, would the children be brought up as Catholics? Spain was still not considered a friendly nation to England at the time, and many still remembered that in 1588 the Spanish Armada attack. The marriage never took place, but the damaged relationship between king and Parliament was never mended by the time James died in 1625.
Thank you for your visit and your very informative opinions on this influential time in history. Many changes occurred in religion, which led to a more open mentality regarding freedom of belief. The next visitor is here to talk about the social aspects that changed as a result of the Reformation. For what better source than a sociology professor? He will specifically be telling about how the role of women was affected. So, what were some of the freedoms that the Reformation gave to women?
Well, two of the greatest freedoms women gained were the right to be educated, and the other was the right to divorce their husbands.
What do you mean by educated? After all, in those days, didn't people believe it was enough for women to learn to run a household?
Yes, women did learn how to run a household, but that was merely through watching their mothers. By education, I mean a formal, in-school education. Luther was one of the most prominent people who strongly believed that women should be educated in the fields of history, classical and modern language, literature, and mathematics. Since many of these coincided with the educational views of humanists, a few others from humanism were also added.
Did this higher education bring about any other changes?
One would certainly expect women to start working, but that was not what happened. In fact, for a woman to have a job was strongly looked down upon.
Okay, so what about divorce? This is such a big issue now, as the divorce rate is rapidly increasing. What was its real significance?
Divorce was one of the most controversial issues that Protestants brought up. Before the Reformation, marriage was viewed as a holy sacrament that could not be broken except by the death of either the husband or the wife. After the Reformation, marriage was still viewed as a holy sacrament, but it was also seen as a matter of the state. Because of this, divorce was now allowed. This was good for the woman because if she was stuck in an abusive relationship, she could get out of it through divorce.
Are there any downsides?
There is no obvious downside of women being educated. After all, many of the smartest people in the world today are women, and the percentage of households relying on the female as the primary bread earner has increased. However, there was a downside to divorce. Namely, there began to be a growing number of orphans. This was because if the husband got his wife pregnant but didn't want a child, he could leave her to care for it all on her own or to give it away. The problem with keeping the child was that this meant getting a job, which, as I mentioned before, was strongly discouraged.
Thank you so much for sharing your knowledge with us. Your students are lucky to have a professor so entertaining and informative. As you can see from our program tonight, the effects of the Reformation did not just end in the 1500s, but have had a lasting effect on our history. Had the Reformation not occurred, I highly doubt that we would have had as many freedoms as we are lucky to have today. As you go about your day, think how the Reformation may have had an effect on your daily life. Thank you for watching History Repeated. See you next week!
I want to